Invocation, immediately followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together to serve the citizens of Haywood County. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decisions tonight, give us wisdom and discernment to make the correct decisions tonight. These things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Only announcement I have is the next regular board meeting will be held here June the 13th at 7 p.m. That's a Monday night at 7 o'clock here at the Education Center. Are there any other announcements that need to be made? Okay. Are there any adjustments that need to be made to the agenda that we're aware of? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kirkpatrick's made the motion, second by Mr. Nesbitt. Any question or discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Next, I believe that's Dr. Putnam's up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I appreciate your willingness to have a meeting outside the regular schedule. This will hopefully expedite things for our flood recovery efforts. We have a couple of folks joining us tonight. We have Joe Stanton. He is with the North Carolina Department of Public Safety. And Darla, I'm sorry, Darla, I didn't get your last name. Darla Hall. And as Joe indicates, she runs things. So I can certainly appreciate that. I have someone who does that on my behalf. So the first thing I want to lay out for you, and then I don't know that it will exactly follow the agenda, but they're kind of interrelated. We have been unable to move forward for some time, mainly because funding has been slow. And the reason it's been slow is we actually had a catch-22, if you will, that existed. FEMA requires us to provide an itemized breakdown of all the costs associated with a project. And if you'll remember, flood-impacted areas are named in the way of projects. Memorial Field, Project 1. Pisgah Softball, Project 2. And I don't know that those are the correct numbers, but you kind of get how things go. And so for each of those projects, FEMA asked that you provide to them an itemized breakdown of how you arrived at the large sum or total for the bids. Well, in general practice, and in North Carolina, and honestly throughout the nation, a lump sum number is typically what you get in a competitive bidding environment. It is the contractor's job to itemize or break down and tabulate each step in the project and what its associated cost. For example, what will the turf cost at Memorial Stadium? What will the fencing cost at Memorial Stadium? What will the gravel that has to be replaced to haul off and dispose and be brought back in cost? And so that itemization is needed on the part of FEMA. Well, so again, we don't, school systems and local government do not do that work. They put out what the finished product is. We wish to have a field that is 50 yards wide by 120 yards long, made of this composite and encapsulated with this type of fencing. We're basically telling what we hope to see as an outcome. So trying to get those two worlds to meet makes it even more difficult when you consider, and through discussions we discovered this, that what FEMA needs is that itemized breakdown, and we can certainly get that from the contractor, but we actually have to put them under contract before they release it because of trade secret law. And so we can't get what we need until we put them under contract, and we can't put the contractor under contract until we have sufficient funds. So that is the catch-22. So that gap and that quagmire, if you will, was not going to be resolved until we had sufficient funds backing us, which brings us to the first item, which is the North Carolina Department of Public Safety's Memorandum of Understanding. And that Memorandum of Understanding, I'm going to ask Joe Stanton to kind of detail that, what its meaning is. He's basically been able to secure $2.5 million that says if FEMA does not meet all of your funding needs, I'm willing to support your endeavors in flood recovery up to $2.5 million for the difference. So let me give you the breakdown, how all this is going to work. Basically, and I'm going to talk in large numbers, if you want down to the penny, I certainly have those, but I think for conversation's sake, it's easier to hear approximate numbers. FEMA has basically said, we intend to fund all related field projects, all flood-related projects at an amount of about $3 million. So approximately $3 million from FEMA. Our total damages are about $7 million. So you see the gap. $3 million is what FEMA is willing to obligate based on their projections and estimates at current. And we got to make it to $7 million. Joe in the North Carolina Department of Public Safety was able to come forward with a $2.5 million in unmet funding. So that takes us to $5.5 million. If you pair those two with insured amount of $1.1 million, it takes the total to $6.6 million with an approximate amount of total damage at $7 million. So we're about 400,000 short. But what this does is get us closer to being able to put under contract AstroTurf, for example, on Memorial Field, so that they can provide to us an itemized breakdown so that we can ask for or inquire about more funding from FEMA, which they've given every indication they will provide if they understand how we arrived at the larger number. So the total risk to this board and to the school system is approximately $400,000, which is not any amount to move quickly or disregard, but it is certainly an amount that could be absorbed within our capital reserve budget, which sits currently at approximately $3 million. So it would appear at this point in time that we have the appropriate amount or close to it, and that we could feasibly move forward or put under contract AstroTurf so that they could begin moving forward, as well as other bidders. Our apparent low bidder on Canton Middle softball and Pisgah softball is Midwest. And those amounts, if you'll give me just a minute, make sure I give you the right number. Mid-South Irrigation Incorporated gave us a bid for Pisgah High School softball field. Where are my glasses? There they are. $459,800 to complete that work. For Canton Middle School softball field, $299,700. And again, this is Mid-South Irrigation Incorporated, and those are the two low bidders on both those projects. Same company, they wanted both fields, and they submitted the apparent low bid. For the football field, we're looking at $1,309,500. And just for the general public who may be listening, did you not replace those for approximately the same amount, both fields? Yes, there's greater damage. That was literally to remove the old turf and go back with new turf and infill. But this would mean for this project, because of the silt, the unacceptable levels of fossil fuels as revealed by the environmental study, the gravel, the drainage system below the field will also have to be replaced. And to do so, portions of the concrete curbing that act as a tack board for the turf will also have to be removed. And the fence is integrated into the concrete curbing, so the fence will have to be replaced and has already been removed. So you can see how the price escalates pretty quickly. We're basically looking at a complete rebuild on Memorial Stadium as far as the playing surface. So you add those totals up, and you can see how our estimates of about $7 million move us there pretty quickly. And we've been unable to execute the contract with anyone simply because we weren't going to do that until we had sufficient funding to do so. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over, or actually, let me start with stop with some questions, any questions you might have, and then I'll turn it over to Joe Stanton to explain the memorandum of understanding with NCDPS.
I've got one question, Dr. Putnam. Sorry I was late, but appreciate that. With the state doing the 2.5 mil and FEMA doing the 3 mil, what is the turnover rate? I mean, how soon would those funds be available to us if we?
The slowest of all of those will be FEMA.
Yes.
And they're looking, I've been given an estimate of June 20th to obligate those funds toward those projects.
So basically, we need $7 million between FEMA, the state, DPS, and insurance. We're at 6.6.
Yes, sir.
So there's a $400,000 deficit that we could be on the hook for, assuming that FEMA doesn't turn loose of any additional money based on real cost structure.
That's correct. So what I've painted for you is the worst case scenario. We're already pretty much assured of the $3 million. Now, what FEMA tells us is if you show us how you arrived, and I'll use Memorial Stadium again only for example purposes, tell us how you arrived at 1.3 million. So we would then, once we put, when or if we put AstroTurf under contract, AstroTurf, could you please provide us the breakdown of your number? And they'll say, sure. Here's what the fencing cost. We competitively bid the sub and the material, and here's how we arrived at that. Current market rate is, and this is our amount that we're asking of you. And that is, FEMA just needs to be able to justify how you arrived at the 1.3 million.
So what they're asking us to do is back into what they require on the front end.
Yes, sir.
Got one more question too on that. Talking about $3 million from FEMA, that's all flood projects. That's including Central Haywood High School as well, or not?
Central Haywood, so I apologize for not making this, because I had a mental note to make this very clear.
Just for
These amounts are for field-related projects only. Central Haywood is a whole nother animal that we're still working through.
He asked me to remind him to say that, and I failed to do it.
That's why I just wanted to clarify, because I figured I knew that's kind of the way it is. I just wanted to confirm it.
The other thing I probably should point out, if you add those numbers, you go, well, that doesn't sound like 7 million to me. Again, these are the estimates only on the playing surfaces. Utilities are not a part of this discussion. Utilities are a whole separate animal. No, where you're most likely going to have to build platforms to elevate all utilities above the floodplain by 2 feet. You're probably going to have to cancel or remove some of your existing underground connections. All of that is a separate entity to these projects. This is playing surfaces only for baseball, Canton Middle and Pisgah, softball, Canton Middle and Pisgah, football, Pisgah, and Canton Middle.
Do you have the numbers for the baseball fields? Because you gave us the softball to Pisgah and the Canton Middle softball. Do you have the baseball as well?
So getting to that, that will actually occur and be open May 24th of this month. We've, again, securing your approval, if that were in fact what were to occur, based on the funding sources that you've just heard, it would encompass the baseball fields. And if you so choose, you could authorize myself and Mr. Meese, our maintenance director, to select the apparent low bidder or the most viable bidder. Sometimes we get low bids that are not qualified, but the most qualified low bidder, and be able to move forward without a second board meeting. And that simply may not be acceptable to you, and I completely understand. But we do not have those bids in hand.
Okay. What about, I know with FEMA, like removing dirt, there's some laws and regulations there about bringing dirt to put it back in, or can we do that with the football field? I know there's a lot of stuff underneath the turf that they're going to have to remove, the drain fields. You know, what about bringing stuff to fill that back in? Is that
And
the problems with that?
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because it gives me an opportunity to illustrate how dangerous it would be to use volunteer help. AstroTurf, our contractor, if you approve them as low bidder and execute that contract, that is their responsibility. And they have to abide within FEMA's regulations, and they have to follow the construction documents made by Civil Design Concepts. It is those very construction documents that FEMA has approved, and anyone accepting the contract must abide by those construction documents and FEMA regulations for bringing in and removing anything from the flooded project.
Now, were these also, I remember in the past we had a conversation about that whoever's awarded the contract, they also have to be FEMA approved contractor, or is that?
They have to be licensed.
They are licensed and they accept them.
They have to be licensed to complete the work.
Okay.
Failure to follow the construction documents, failure to follow the FEMA guidelines, could result up to losing their license and a fine, or both.
Mr. Francis, the question that you asked really was part of an earlier discussion where we were talking about bringing in new structures and creating dirt or concrete berms and things like that. And that was a no-no, to add additional obstructions in the floodway. And replacing under the turf is a different, little bit of a different situation, because you're not adding anything. What you take out, you'll put the equivalent back in. And so that, the first time I heard him talk about this, I thought the same thing you were thinking.
Because there was some concerns at one time about the baseball field, even taking dirt out of the baseball field and bringing it back as well, I think.
Right. So basically, and I'm going to use this is a completely arbitrary number. Let's say there's 50 tons of gravel, which there's probably far more than that under the football field. If we remove 50 tons, we'll have to bring back in 50 tons. But that's not our responsibility. That will be AstroTurf to meet those guidelines. That'll be their responsibility.
Any other bids besides AstroTurf for the turf replacement?
We had, let me just double check this one more time, but I believe they were the only bidder. That is correct. I'm looking at the bid tab right now.
Because you had to
AstroTurf.
rescind it, because we only had one, had to rescind it and get another contract to get.
Yes, and the
Second time they accept only one bidder.
North Carolina general statute says that if we don't get 3 bidders, we have to re-advertise for 2 weeks, which also delayed the process. But after re-advertisement and a reopening of the bid, you can accept any and all bids, whether there's 1 or 101. And throughout the process, we only ever had 1 bidder.
How about the softball fields?
Softball fields,
Bidders did we have on those?
we had 2 of those, and we had Mid-South Irrigation Incorporated, and we had NHM Constructors LLC on both Canton Middle Softball and Pisgah Softball. That's correct.
And I don't wanna prolong this or ask for exact details, but Canton Middle Softball, 299,000, what's that? I mean, they've got dugouts, it's gotta be in the fence. They never had restrooms down there, correct?
Yeah, they did.
Where are they correct?
They had a concession stand with their restrooms, right behind right behind the home plate.
Is that pretty much what the 299,000 is gonna cover?
And the fence. I don't know if you've priced fence lately. Whew.
It's
Ain't
going
nothing
up,
cheap
going up
anymore.
weekly, though.
No, sir.
The sooner we get it, the better.
And we need to get going as quick as possible, or everything's gonna go up more.
Just for context, the other bidder on that Canton Middle softball field, $415,069.
Ouch. Are we still within the time frame of the bid being legit still, or are we going to have to rebid it?
Well, we're still within that time frame, and again, we're going to get to an ask, but I don't care to tell you what my ask is right now. Basically, I would be asking all of you to authorize Josh and I to evaluate these bids, make sure they are a licensed and credible bidder to do this work. Use that in conjunction with looking at the amounts that they have estimated or provided to us to complete these projects. Engage them, go ahead and accept their bid and put them under contract since funding is available, less $400,000, so that we can more readily get those materials to FEMA to seek greater refund or reimbursement, knowing in confidence that we have, at a worst case scenario, $3 million from FEMA, $2.5 million from NCDPS, and $1.1 million in insurance money. It allows us to also begin the clock. For example, using AstroTurf, there's a 60-day lead time on artificial turf, the construction and matting and weaving together of that turf. There's a 60-day lead time. By being able to put them under contract, since we have almost sufficient funding, we can begin eating into that clock of 60 days, which means we move quicker to a launch point where we can hopefully get the surface back ready for play and get our kids back on the field. And Joe, I'm going to quote you on this, and you can correct me. I think it moves our odds of playing on it this fall from 1% to 15%.
Or higher, or higher.
He didn't say the or higher. And he's a pretty tough negotiator. I asked him to insure us for the whole $7 million, and he said that would be a hard no. So if there are no other questions for me, I'd like to turn it over to Joe and let him talk to you about what this memorandum of understanding. Would that be okay?
Sure. He's going to come to a mic since we're recording.
Right there, or that one right there?
Either one.
That one's on.
Punch it again. You're good.
Again, this is Joe Stanton with North Carolina Department of Public Safety. I asked him to wear his shirt. He looks really official in that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Good evening.
Good evening.
But let me first just go over what this money came from. This money's from the governor and General Assembly appropriated $10 million to cover unmet needs as it relates to public assistance, which is FEMA's Emergency Management Assistance Program for infrastructure due to, of course, the damages from Tropical Storm Fred. The idea behind this money is to assist communities that may have needs that maybe FEMA would not cover. In looking at everything under these projects, I'll be honest, $2.5 million, I honestly believe, and I've seen many times, I've been doing this for about 20 years, I believe that FEMA will cover the majority of these damages. And the simple reason is that the school system, the maintenance, everybody, Dr. Putnam has done a great job from the damage description all the way to the scope of work. Last week I sat in a meeting where we went, even though it was a lump sum bid, we went item by item and agreed on the scope of work that FEMA had. Now, the reason that there's such a discrepancy in cost is because of the lump sum contract, and FEMA, because they did not have estimated cost per item, they used RS means. And so we know that RS means under this environment that we're in is going to be a little lower than what, the real bid amount's going to be. FEMA pays on large projects, and this is a large project, the actual cost, as long as it can be documented and it follows the scope of work. So what will happen is as we're going on, as the invoices come in, they'll be sent to FEMA for approval, and FEMA will start adding all of this up. Then upon completion, if it's an underrun or an overrun, FEMA adjusts the difference. And we can ask for this all the way throughout the project. It's pretty much normal operations. I've seen this many a time. It just takes a while to get started. So I'm looking forward to getting this moving forward. I'm glad that this grant could play a part in it. Hopefully it will be a positive part. Again, I'm also hoping that I won't be spending a lot of this money, but at the same time, it's there for you. We carved it out, we put it aside, and if you need it, that's what it's there for. And it's to cover the scope. It's not a want list, but it's to cover whatever the needs are that maybe FEMA won't cover. We'd like to get started as soon as possible. I talked to FEMA today. They plan to have the scope of work completed Friday. We talked about the schedule of getting this, obligated by the 20th. I need the scope of work completed and signed because the next step is for me to take it to the environmental for FEMA and start working that angle and getting all of that approved. The good thing about it is that you are not really going beyond the scope of work or the footprint that you have now. And so that's really going to help with the environmental and other things. What you're doing is really just replacing what's there already. You're just, it's just a time that things cost more money. So I'll ask if, at this point, I'll stop and ask if there's any questions.
I just have a comment. I just like to say thank you for working with us on this projects, and for this memorandum of understanding to get us rolling.
Well, we're glad
Our intent is to be moving forward as fast, but not to risk, not being reimbursed. And so you've offered that to us, and I sure appreciate it.
We're glad to do it, and again, I think this was the intent of this funds from the General Assembly and the governor, and we're glad to be able to offer it.
Okay.
I'd like to thank you too, because basically with this, basically an insurance policy backing it up to help us get it moving, we do appreciate that, and I appreciate Dr. Putnam and Josh Meese getting all that together, and y'all having those meetings last week and getting things rolling. So I do appreciate it, being from Canton, and we do, and as you pointed out, we are just trying to rebuild what we lost, and so we do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, knowing that if we put all these things together, that we're giving Dr. Putnam, Dr. Nolte, Mr. Meese, some flexibility in making decisions going forward, I'd like to put forward the following motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the bids for Tuscola for Tuscola. We want some money too.
Yeah.
For Pisgah Memorial Field, Pisgah High School softball field, Pisgah High School baseball field, Canton Middle School baseball field, and the Canton Middle School softball field, at the recommendation of our school maintenance director, Josh Meese, and Associate Superintendent Trevor Putnam, to begin field work once FEMA obligates the money to these projects. With that said, I think this motion allows us to move as fast as possible. We may not speed it up, but it'll keep us from impeding the process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion from Dr. Rogers, a second from Mr. Rogers. Any question or discussion on the motion on the floor?
It's a great thing.
My only question is, do we have a good understanding of the baseball field and how that's going to work yet? Or is that one project that sort of got some questions still about it?
Well, it is a leased parcel of land. That is always a question. What I can tell you is, right here in this folder, I didn't bother you with a full-scale set of plans, but I have them. They're out for bid. They're open for public bidding right now. And so if you'd like to see those, we have a pretty good handle of the work that needs to be completed there. That said, the same assurances for completion of these projects are coming from FEMA, NCDPS, and it sounds like the Governor and General Assembly, and insurance money. Those are monies that are not part of our normal operational budget. The only thing that lies outside of our normal operational budget and any capital reserve we have is $400,000 approximately.
So basically, Bobby's motion is not right on our agenda, correct?
Correct. And we'll go back and accept the MOU.
Was I answering the appropriate question?
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
All right.
I mean, you're saying that the bids for the baseball field's gonna be in by the 20th or the
24th, May
24th is when
24th.
they're closed down. I think that may be where Jim sorta, cause we're sitting here, you gave us all the other numbers. I think that may be where, I'm not speaking for him, but that may be where the thing is going. Once those bids come in for those, you will still be reaching out to us and letting us know, but we're not gonna have to vote on it, how this proposal, motion is.
That's correct.
You'll let
We'll still be
somebody
receiving
know.
information for our information.
Right, yeah,
For
pretty much.
information,
You'll
we'll
just be giving us information, okay, this is what's going on at the baseball fields.
Right. And there
If
are,
something gets out of whack, we can always say, hold on,
Well, but
it's outside the scope.
and I don't want Mr. Putnam blow up his head, if you want, I could say that. Sorta. So far, they've been pretty good, so I believe they will. If something gets out of whack there, they'll shut it down and then call Mr. Francis and say, we better have another meeting.
well, and just to give you some assurance, number one, as Mr. Stanton pointed out, it does have to comply with FEMA's scope of work. So we don't get to create what that scope of work is. It has to comply with FEMA's regulations and guidance. Number two, it has to be competitively bid. per North Carolina general statute. And number three, it has to be by a properly licensed entity to complete the work. So whether this board approved or not, if I would like to continue gainful employment, I will have to comply with all of the state and federal laws that govern.
Sure.
Right, yeah.
Well, and these lines are pretty tight. There's not a whole lot of wiggling between the lines, so.
Well, and I think everybody agrees, the faster we can do it, the faster everybody can get back on the playing field, and I think that's what this whole board and everybody in the community over there wants, and really in Haywood County. So.
Was the lease an issue with FEMA? Was that
Well,
an issue?
Lease property.
It was a lease
Well,
property?
whether we were gonna
Well-
spend that money for a leased property or.
I know we had discussion, but I'm afraid I missed something.
Yeah, and maybe I'm inaccurately answered Mr. Francis's question. I understood, when you ask me what are the risks, I have to point out any and all that exist, just like I pointed out the 400,000 that we may not be covered in. If you're looking at recovering these facilities, well, to recover Memorial Stadium and the softball fields, we own those. There is no assumed risk there whatsoever. The risk with baseball is that it is a leased property. I'll offer some rationale there. Even proceeding on a leased property, we're only replacing back what we've already forgone expenditures on to have there anyway. And again, it's not coming out of, unless it's the 400,000 in total, above and beyond what DPS and FEMA and insurance would fund. We're not out any money there as far as our normal operational budget, state tax dollars, lottery funds that come to us.
I think it's fair to say that the scope of work that we're discussing here tonight brings us back equal to the position prior to the flood.
Makes us whole.
Makes us whole. That's a great way to say it.
And I like to say is, and as Mr. Kirkpatrick and Dr. Rogers and Mr. Rogers, everybody's on building and grounds, Josh Meese and Dr. Putnam has been very transparent. And we've seen a whole lot on this in building and grounds, and we're comfortable, or I'm definitely comfortable that what they're doing and that they're ready to move forward with what they're doing is correct, and that they're ready to move forward in getting these bids in and making a decision as quick as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Any other questions or comments before we vote? There being none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we need to approve the memorandum of understanding for that $2.5 million, correct?
Yes, sir.
I need a motion for that, please.
Motion that we approve public safety memorandum.
Of understanding. Okay, we have a motion for Mr. Henson. Who seconded it?
Mr. Burnett,
Mr. Burnett. Any question or discussion on the motion on the floor?
you're gonna read it.
I just wanted to add, subject to Pat's final revision.
Okay.
He's not had it very long, and
I've read it and I'm familiar with these type documents, and I'm okay with it.
Mr. Smathers, you're good to go.
Good to go.
All right, before we vote, we do have the blessing of our attorney on the MOU.
Have you seen it? I mean, I haven't seen it actually. We got a copy of it?
I haven't seen it.
It's right here. I didn't have time to make you copies. Joe, you bailed me out here. We just
Darla just typed it up for me.
Yeah, I was just handed it about 45 minutes ago.
It's fine, I think we hadn't seen it already.
Rogers,
It's pretty, it references
Pretty
a
reverent.
lot of North Carolina state, I got it. It references a lot of North Carolina statutes. It's essentially saying that they will pay us the money, we document the need timely, and that they will supervise it, and we will supervise it. We will be responsible for them, the expenditure of the money is in the correct way.
Okay.
And that if it's not done correctly, Mr. Trevor goes to the penitentiary.
That's right.
Yeah. That's basically what it says.
There you
Well,
go.
I knew that's kind of what it said. I just want to make sure everybody understood
Let's
it.
definitely vote on it.
Thank
then.
you, yes. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments before we vote? There being none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we can go forward and just sound me like, go full steam ahead and keep us informed of what's going on.
And just as a matter of transparency and information, Dr. Putnam, I think it would be prudent for us to add that to our building and grounds checklist so that we review where we're at each monthly meeting and can report to the board if we see anything
Okay.
wavering from what we've agreed to.
And just to reiterate, I can't say it enough, it is such a large-scale recovery. This is for playing surfaces only. The rest we'll figure out. If Friday night lights have to become Saturday skies or, whatever needs to happen, if we can just have a place for our kids to play and practice, by all means possible, that's what we're going to try to do.
Sounds like a plan. Very good.
And thank you, Joe Stanton. This is your 74th
74th or 75th disaster.
74th or 75th disaster. He's helped the county. He's now helped us. He's helped the town of Canton. He's a valuable wealth of information. And had he not come through with the $2.5 million, you could see there was too large a gap that I would even recommend anything to this board.
Mr.
Thank you.
Stanton and Ms. Hall, thank y'all for coming to our meeting tonight and enlightening us on what's going on. And again, thank you for the memorandum of understanding for the $2.5 million that fills that gap. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other announcements before we adjourn?
I have one.
I would like to see that 15% come on up a little better if it's possible.
I have one, Mr.
15%.
Francis, just for public consumption. We did post some stuff online. If people are trying to reach us in the central office the next few days, we will begin moving tomorrow, and that will take probably a few weeks for everyone to move. So if you're trying to call us or email us, just know that we may literally have the telephone in the vehicle taking it to our new office, and it may not be plugged up. But you should still be able to leave a message, and the same thing with email. But we should be moving to our renovated offices beginning tomorrow, and that will go on in phases for a few weeks.
And then we'll officially announce a grand opening at some point in the future.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. There's nothing else.